Ladies and gentlemen, there is a force that governs human nature, a principle that dictates how people perceive and value you. It is the law of scarcity, the undeniable truth that what is readily available is often overlooked, while what is rare is sought after. We see it everywhere. Luxury brands, exclusive invitations, and opportunities that only a few can access. These things carry immense value because they are not handed out freely. There is a fundamental truth that shapes the way human beings perceive value. What is always within reach is often taken for granted, while what is scarce becomes desirable. It is an undeniable force, one that dictates how people react to presence and absence. When something is constantly available, the mind grows accustomed to it, assuming it will always be there. But when that very thing becomes distant, when it is no longer as easily accessible, a shift occurs. Suddenly, its value is recognized. Suddenly, it is missed. This is not manipulation. It is psychology. It is the way the mind operates. The moment something is no longer within arm's reach, the mind begins to reflect on what was once easily obtained. It replays memories, analyzes past moments, and starts to crave what was once overlooked. This happens because people do not appreciate what is abundant. They appreciate what is scarce. It is why the rarest gems are the most expensive, why limited edition items become collector's treasures, and why the most sought-after opportunities are those that only a few can access. Now consider this principle in your own life. If you are always available, if you are always the one initiating, if your presence is something that others can count on without question, you lose a certain level of perceived value, not because you are not worthy, but because the mind is wired to seek what is not always given freely. The key is understanding that distance creates appreciation. When you step back, when you allow space between you and others, you create an opening for desire to form. You give people the opportunity to realize your worth, to understand the significance of what you bring. It is in the absence of a familiar presence that reflection begins. It is when the calls are no longer answered right away, when the instant responses turn into moments of silence, that the mind starts to wonder, to question, to crave. This is not about playing games. It is about energy. It is about recognizing that your time and presence are not obligations but privileges. And privileges are not handed out without discernment. When you are constantly showing up, constantly proving, constantly giving, the balance shifts. You teach people to expect you rather than appreciate you. But when you create space, when you become selective about where you invest your energy, you shift that balance back into your hands. When something is rare, its value increases. This is a universal truth that applies to every aspect of life: objects, opportunities, relationships, and even your presence. The more common something is, the less people tend to notice it. It becomes part of the background, something assumed rather than appreciated. But the moment it becomes scarce, the moment it is no longer easily accessible, everything changes. Suddenly it is missed. Suddenly its importance is realized. Think about the most coveted things in the world: the finest diamonds, the most luxurious cars, the most exclusive invitations. What makes them desirable is not just their quality, but their limited availability. It is not enough for something to be great. It must also be scarce for people to truly appreciate it. This same principle applies to how people perceive and value one another. If you are always available, always giving, always showing up without hesitation, your presence becomes routine. Not because you are not valuable, but because familiarity dulls appreciation. Human nature is wired to take things for granted when they are always present. The sunrise is breathtaking, but because it happens every morning, few stop to admire it. Clean water is essential, but in places where it flows freely, people rarely think about its worth. It is only in scarcity that appreciation deepens. When something is taken away, even momentarily, the mind begins to recognize its importance. This is why creating space, pulling back, and allowing absence to do its work is so powerful. When you are always giving without limits, always showing up without hesitation, you make it easy for others to assume that you will always be there. But when you step back, when you begin to protect your energy, when you stop offering yourself freely, people take notice. The sudden shift forces reflection. They begin to realize what they had, what they overlooked, and what they now miss. This is not about being cold or distant. It is about balance. It is about understanding that what is given too freely is not cherished as deeply. It is about recognizing that your time, your presence, and your energy are not obligations, but privileges. And when something is a privilege, it is valued more. There is a transformation that happens when you decide to be intentional with your presence. The people who once expected you to always be available now start to wonder why you were not. They start to reflect on the energy you brought, the value you provided, the comfort they once took for granted. And in that reflection, appreciation is born. This applies not only to relationships, but to every area of life. Employers value employees who set boundaries and demonstrate their worth rather than those who overextend themselves without recognition. Friends respect those who know their value and choose their company wisely. Even in business, the most sought-after brands are those that do not try to appeal to everyone, but instead position themselves as exclusive. The shift is simple but profound. The less accessible something is, the more people want it. The moment you begin to move differently, to stop overgiving, to reserve your energy for those who truly value it, you will notice a change. People will start to appreciate what they once overlooked. Will begin to seek out what they once assumed would always be there. Not because you demanded it, but because scarcity has a way of revealing true worth. When you recognize that your presence is valuable, you stop offering it freely to those who do not appreciate it. You begin to hold yourself to a higher standard. And in doing so, you teach others to do the same. Scarcity breeds appreciation, and when you embody that truth, the world around you will shift in ways you never imagined. The more you chase, the more things slip away. This is a principle deeply rooted in human nature. When something is constantly pursued, it begins to lose its value in the eyes of the one being pursued. But when there is space, when there is restraint, when there is a sense of detachment, attraction grows. It is a paradox that governs relationships, opportunities, and even success. People are drawn to what they cannot easily have. The moment something appears too available, too eager, too desperate to be chosen, it becomes less desirable. This is not about playing games. It is about energy. It is about understanding that desperation repels while self-assurance attracts. When you are constantly seeking validation, constantly proving your worth, constantly trying to hold on to things that are slipping away, you unknowingly push them further. But when you let go, when you detach from the outcome, when you shift your focus inward, everything begins to move toward you. Detachment does not mean indifference. It does not mean you do not care. It means you are no longer controlled by the need for approval, by the fear of loss, by the desire to be chosen. It means you are secure in yourself. When you do not seek constant reassurance, when you do not beg for attention, when you do not try to force things to happen, you create space for others to come toward you. People are drawn to confidence, to mystery, to those who move with purpose rather than desperation. Think about the times when you have wanted something so badly that you held on to it too tightly. A relationship, an opportunity, a dream. When you are too attached, fear takes over. Fear of losing, fear of missing out, fear of not being enough. And that fear manifests in your actions. You become anxious, you overextend, you try too hard, and in doing so, you make what you want feel suffocating. But when you take a step back, when you trust that what is meant for you will stay, when you shift your focus from clinging to growing, everything changes. People respect those who respect themselves. They are drawn to those who know their worth. When you detach, when you no longer try to force connection, when you stop over-explaining, over-giving, and over-proving, you allow others the space to recognize your value on their own. And this is where attraction is strongest, not in neediness, but in self-sufficiency. This principle applies beyond relationships. It applies to success, to dreams, to everything you desire. How the energy of attachment is an energy of lack. It is an energy that says, I do not have this and I am afraid I never will. But the energy of detachment is powerful. It says, I am already complete and what is meant for me will find me. This shift changes everything. When you stop chasing, when you focus on becoming, when you prioritize your growth, your energy shifts. You become a force that attracts rather than a person who begs. This is why those who are secure in themselves never struggle for attention. Their presence is enough. They do not try to convince others of their worth, they embody it. They do not fear losing, they trust that what aligns with them will remain. They do not cling, they move with confidence, knowing that true connection, true success, and true fulfillment come not from desperation, but from alignment. When you detach, you free yourself. You break the cycle of seeking external validation and instead create a life where things come to you effortlessly. The less you force, the more flows toward you. And in that space of self-assurance, in that place of trust, you become magnetic. Your mind is the foundation of everything you experience, everything you achieve, and everything you become. The way you think determines the way you move, the way you act, and ultimately, the way you are perceived. If you want to upgrade your worth, whether in relationships, career, or life itself, you must first upgrade your mind. Everything external is a reflection of what is happening internally. Change your mindset and your entire reality shifts. Too often people focus on external validation. They seek higher pay, better relationships, more recognition, yet they neglect the most important factor, their mindset. A person with an average mindset will always live an average life, no matter how much opportunity is placed before them. But a person with a strong, disciplined, and growth-oriented mindset can turn even the smallest opportunity into something extraordinary. This is why two people can start in the same place, yet one rises while the other remains stuck. It is never about circumstances, it is about the way the mind processes those circumstances. Your worth is not determined by what you have, it is determined by what you believe you deserve. If you believe you are only worth so much, that belief will dictate your actions. You will settle for less, you will hesitate to take risks, and you will shrink yourself to fit within the limitations of your own thoughts. But when you upgrade your mind, when you expand your thinking, when you refuse to accept mediocrity, you begin to make choices that align with a higher version of yourself. You start to demand more, to expect more, to operate at a different frequency. And as your mindset shifts, so does your value in the eyes of the world. A powerful mind does not wait for permission. It does not seek constant reassurance. It moves with certainty. It knows that success, wealth, influence, these things are not given. They are created, and they are created by those who have conditioned their minds to see opportunities where others see obstacles. Every challenge becomes a lesson. Every setback becomes fuel. Every failure becomes a stepping stone to something greater. There is a reason why the most successful people in the world invest in their minds more than anything else. They read, they learn, they surround themselves with those who challenge them to think differently. They do not waste time on distractions, negativity, or things that do not contribute to their growth. They understand that the mind is a tool, and like any tool, it must be sharpened, strengthened, and constantly upgraded. If you want to upgrade your worth, start by upgrading your habits. The way you spend your time, the information you consume, the conversations you entertain. These things shape your mindset, and in turn, they shape your future. You cannot expect extraordinary results with ordinary thinking. You cannot demand high value when your mind is filled with self-doubt, fear, and limiting beliefs. You must reprogram yourself to think at a higher level, to move with purpose, to operate with confidence. When you upgrade your mind, the world begins to respond differently to you. The people around you start to take notice. New opportunities appear. You start attracting the things that once felt out of reach, not because the world has changed, but because you have. Your energy shifts, your presence becomes more powerful, and suddenly what once seemed impossible becomes inevitable. Your worth is not fixed, it is a reflection of your mindset. The moment you commit to upgrading your mind, you step into a version of yourself that commands more, attracts more, and achieves more. The world does not give you what you want, it gives you what you believe you are worth. Upgrade your mind and everything else will follow. In a world where noise dominates, silence holds the greatest power. People rush to speak, to prove, to justify, to explain. But those who understand the power of silence know that true influence does not always come from words. It comes from presence, from restraint, from the ability to observe rather than react. Silence is not weakness, it is control. It is the ability to choose when to engage and when to let the absence of words carry more weight than any response ever could. Most people fear silence. They see it as a void that must be filled, as an uncomfortable space that demands words. But those who embrace silence understand that it speaks louder than anything they could say. It is in silence that people reveal their true intentions. It is in silence that emotions rise to the surface. It is in silence that respect is earned, not by shouting, not by arguing, but by knowing when to step back and let energy do the talking. Silence creates mystery. When you do not always reveal your thoughts, when you do not react impulsively, when you do not waste words on things that do not matter, people begin to take notice. They lean in, they wonder, they respect. Those who talk too much, who explain too much, who constantly seek validation through words, often dilute their presence. But those who master the art of silence become unpredictable, and unpredictability commands attention. Silence is not avoidance, it is a strategy. It allows you to see what others miss. It gives you the advantage of observing before acting, of listening before responding. In conversations, in business, in relationships, the one who speaks the least often holds the most power. They are not swayed by emotions. They do not reveal their hand too soon. They understand that silence forces others to reveal themselves, to fill the space, to make their own insecurities known. When you embrace silence, you step into a different level of control. You no longer react to every opinion, every criticism, every demand for your attention. You move with intention. You conserve your energy. You do not waste words on those who do not deserve them. You do not explain yourself to those who have already decided what they believe. You do not engage in arguments that serve no purpose. You choose when to speak, and when you do, your words carry weight because they are rare, because they are chosen with purpose, because they are backed by the power of restraint. Silence also builds confidence. When you no longer need to fill every moment with words, when you are comfortable sitting in stillness, when you do not rush to prove yourself, you exude a different kind of strength. People trust those who do not speak out of impulse. They respect those who can remain composed, who do not let emotions dictate their actions, who understand that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, silence makes you stand out. It forces people to pay attention. It makes them question. It makes them curious. It makes them respect you in ways they never would if you were constantly explaining, defending, or justifying yourself. Silence is power. It is presence, it is discipline, and when used correctly, it can change the way people perceive you, the way opportunities come to you, and the way you carry yourself in every aspect of life. Too many people spend their lives chasing validation, seeking approval, and waiting for someone else to tell them they are good enough. They measure their worth by the opinions of others, by the recognition they receive, by how much praise they can gather. But this pursuit is a trap, a never-ending cycle that keeps them stuck, dependent on external approval rather than internal growth. The real path to power is not validation, it is elevation. It is about rising beyond the need for permission, beyond the desire to be liked, beyond the urge to prove yourself. It is about becoming so focused on your own progress, your own transformation, that validation becomes irrelevant. When you seek validation, you hand over control. You allow others to dictate your value, to decide what is worthy, to influence how you see yourself. This is a fragile way to live, because the moment the validation disappears, so does your confidence. The moment people stop clapping, you begin to question yourself. This is why those who rely on external approval never reach their highest potential. This is why those who rely on external approval never reach their highest potential. They are too busy performing, too busy adjusting themselves to fit expectations, too busy chasing applause rather than chasing mastery. Elevation, on the other hand, is freedom. It is knowing that your worth is not defined by likes, comments, or recognition. It is about committing to your growth whether anyone is watching or not. It is about understanding that real success comes from what you build, what you create, what you develop within yourself. It is about discipline, about resilience, about the ability to keep moving forward even when no one acknowledges your progress. Because when you focus on elevation, validation becomes a byproduct, not the goal. People who elevate themselves operate differently. They do not waste time proving their worth. They develop it. They do not look for shortcuts to success. They build themselves brick by brick, knowing that real growth takes time. They do not shrink themselves to fit into someone else's expectations. They rise so high that expectations no longer matter. Their focus is not on being seen, it is on becoming so undeniable that being seen is inevitable. There is a reason why the most successful people in the world do not seek validation. They do not need it. They are too busy creating, too busy evolving, too busy pushing themselves beyond their limits. They know that validation is temporary, but elevation is permanent. They do not let opinions dictate their path. They do not wait for permission to be great. They simply put in the work day after day, knowing that the results will speak louder than any words ever could. When you shift your focus from validation to elevation, everything changes. You stop caring about what others think, and you start caring about who you are becoming. You stop looking for approval, and you start looking for progress. You stop worrying about whether people support you, and you start supporting yourself. And as you rise, as you grow, as you elevate yourself beyond the limitations of validation, you realize that the only approval you ever needed was your own. This is where real power comes from. Not from being liked, not from being accepted, but from knowing that you are becoming the best version of yourself, regardless of who notices. When you commit to elevation, validation takes care of itself. But by the time it arrives, you no longer need it because you have already become exactly who you were meant to be. Thank you.